Hello again YouTube and Amazon reviews. This is a quick product review. I've got two products here. I'll post the link to both products because they'll be applicable to both. I bought these a couple of weeks ago. These are Sonoff Wi-Fi smart switches. So I've got two versions here. I've got this which is an inline power switch. I've looked at some of the reviews from some of the American and Australian purchasers. It's exactly the same version, slight difference in the circuitry inside obviously for the voltage, but very similar design. And the version to the left here is a wall switch, is a Wi-Fi wall touch switch. It's basically the same thing, but instead of being in a little inline package, it's in a wall switch. So you've got the piece that goes inside the wall, connections on the back, and you've got a touch switch on the front here. It's got a nice shiny front. It says on the advert that it's glass. It's not glass. It's some sort of plastic. I don't know what type. It's very shiny. Don't know how it will stand up to the test of time, but I'm sure I'll find out. And if it doesn't bode well, I'll post a link. But so far I've been playing with this and it seems to be okay. It does look quite nice out of the box. The only drawback of this is it's got a fairly heavy plastic bevel here. I'll get something white behind it. You'll see it's got quite a large black border. So the front's nice and shiny, it's got a nice white finish and it's got a nice slim white edge, and then you've got this black edge which is about, you see that, it's about maybe 3 times the depth of the white edge. There's a reason for it. There's a circuit board in the back and it's spacing out for the circuit board, but it could have been designed a little bit better just to give it a nicer profile. I'll cover the inline switch first. This one, it's quite nice, it works well. There's an app that you can download that works with iOS and Android. The app's called EWLink or EWE-Link. When you download the app at first, it takes a few minutes to install. It's a bit slow, but once it's been installed, it starts up and runs pretty quickly. I've read other reviewers saying that it hogs the resources on their phone or their tablet. I haven't found that. When it closes down, it seems to close down and go into full sleep mode or switch off. It doesn't hog any resources or memory on my phone, but everyone's experiences can be different. So this is the UK version. It's called the Sonoff Basic Wi-Fi Smart Switch. There is a different version of this. It has an RF, I think it's a 433 megahertz receiver in it as well. You can use a remote control. This is just the basic version without that. It does have on the box here, it's got the CE mark. I'm not convinced that's a genuine CE mark. Maybe not so much for this one, more for the wall switch, and I'll cover that in a minute, why I think that's not a genuine CE mark. This one is missing a vital component, and that's an earth. It doesn't have a protective earth all the way through. I'll show you that in a second. So the device itself, it's a very it's quite a familiar inline package. You'll see that a lot of lighting transformers come in this style of package. The cover, when you screw it off, doubles up as a cable clamp, so that holds your cable in place. So that in itself is not an issue. What I do find a bit problematic is the distance between the cable clamp and the terminals. It's literally like maybe 2 millimeters. So that's not so great. That means that people are likely to have these inside the wall or inside the ceiling with the insulation poking out, so you'll have brown and blue wires showing out of here, and that's not really a good thing. It's quite difficult actually to prep a cable properly, get it terminated properly, and have all the insulation inside the unit. But it can be done. It just takes a bit of knowledge and perseverance. So it's the same on the input and the output. Now I do have one of these installed in my shed. It does an outside light, and it works quite well. I've had it on for a few weeks now and I don't have any issue with it. What I did have an issue with, as I've already said, there's no earth. So when you have a look at this, you've got a live and neutral. there's nowhere to connect an earth. So if you are going to use this, especially if you're going to use it on something like an outside light, you have to use an earth. So you'd need to bring a terminal block in, make sure it's connected properly, connected through, and then your terminal block, if you're going to use this in the UK, the terminal block needs to be inside another enclosure, or you need to put all of this inside an enclosure to meet the wiring regulations so that they can't come in contact with anything. So that's why it would have been nice to have an earth inside of this so that the box itself would meet the wiring regs. But like I say, with the terminal, the cable clamps being so close to the terminals, it's a bit iffy anyway. So if you're going to use these and you're going to put them in your house, put it in another enclosure, even if it's just inside the wall. It keeps everything safe. So inside the unit, the base pops off quite easily when there's no screws in. Inside the unit, the circuit board's nice and clean and well laid out. This relay is what's switching the load, so it switches your light on and off. And if I have a look on the back of the board, you've got more electronic circuitry, and you've got some pretty beefy solder bound tracks here. So they've got the tracks underneath and then they've loaded them up with solder. There's a good reason for that, because if you have a look at this outer track, it's actually quite thin. If you have a look at it against my finger, it's quite narrow. If that wasn't loaded up with solder, I wouldn't put 10 amps through this. I probably won't put 10 amps through this anyway, I'll only use it for a light. But without that solder, it probably wouldn't be able to support 10 amps load. They have cut anti-tracking slots in the board here and here to stop any flashover. They've also got it down here between the connections, and it helps to separate the 5-volt side from the main side. So it's quite nice in the way they've done that. So the board itself's quite good. Like I say, on the top it's quite clean and quite well laid out. These connectors here aren't the original connectors. The original connectors are these, and you can probably see from there one of the screws is missing, and that's because these little screws in here aren't captive. So when you unscrew that, if you screw it out enough, it becomes loose and it just falls out, and there's a little spring that just catches the cable as well, and I can't see it, it's on my desk somewhere, but they fall out. So when I went to install one of these, I was trying to install it on an outside light, or on a connection inside for my outside light, but I was trying to install it above my head, and as soon as I loosen these off enough, they just fall out. So if I loosen this off to get the cable in, once you go so far, if that's upside down, there you are, it just falls out. And then the little spring in here, that follows suit very quickly after. The other thing is, you've noticed the terminals here are round, they're drilled, and then they've got this little tab in them to hold the cable. They're not, there's nothing wrong with that, but the connectors I've replaced it with are this type, and they have square connections, so it's much better, especially if you're going to put two cables in, if you have a loop in and loop out. They just get a better grip of the cable. These aren't clamp, they aren't square clamp connectors, but they are square connectors, and this little spring comes down and helps to secure the cable. But I've just replaced the board, the original connectors, with these, and it gives me a much better connection. The other thing I did when I did try and use one of the original ones, when I tightened it up, the whole thing just spun. They're just a little bit flimsy. So if you are going to use these, I would suggest you do the same, replace the original connectors. Apart from that, the unit's okay. It does work well. It's, like I say, it's been on, I think I've had it on now maybe 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and I haven't had any issues. It connects to Wi-Fi pretty quickly. I haven't had any issues with it dropping off the network. I haven't had any issues with it not working. It's very responsive, it's really quick. I do actually quite like them, especially for the price. These were $14.99 for two, including Prime shipping, so I got them next day. So overall, not a bad unit. It could be doing with some tweaks in terms of quality, but it's quite useful. Just if you are going to use it, please, please, please make sure that you connect an earth and make sure it's connected all the way through, and then put all this in a separate enclosure so that you meet the wiring regulations. So if we look at the switch next, the wall switch. So this is very similar. Effectively it's the same unit, just in a different package. It does exactly the same thing. It connects to Wi-Fi and connects in this case again I've used a light, and it works with the touch. There's a version that works with an RF remote, and it also works across the internet, so it's an IoT device using Wi-Fi and the EV-Link app. I'll just switch this on and show you how responsive it is. So if you just touch the touch plate, switches on, touch it again, it switches off. The list of features that you get through the EV-Link app are quite nice as well. You can set a timer for it to come on and off. You can set scenes where you know, for example, you can have watching TV and it'll switch the lights off, so it would switch this one off and might switch the wee inline one on if you've got a lamp on that. So it is quite nice out of the box. They are hackable as well, so you can load your own firmware onto them if you want to run your own smart home server, which a lot of people do. So that's quite nice that you can do that, and it just takes a little bit of soldering to add a 4-pin header on the board, but the board's already pre-drilled and the holes are there and soldered already to put the header on. Now I'm going to switch this back off again, take it off the mains, and show you why I think that the CE marking on this one, which is here, isn't a genuine CE mark. If you watch Abe's videos, you'll know that his take on CE isn't certified for Europe, it's China export. In this case, I'm fairly sure it's not a genuine CE mark for this reason. If you have a look at the screws, so in the UK, if you've got a light switch or anything else that you're going to install into your house, you would have this sort of arrangement. And this screw here, I've tried to take this screw out, I'm trying to pinch it to use it, but in this case your cables would be in here and your screws are recessed in here, so effectively you can't touch them. So whether it's inside a back box or not, it doesn't really matter to meet the UK wiring regulations. There are certain distances that have to be maintained from anything touchable and live electricity. So if you think about something like this is a standard UK connector block. This is a small, I think it's a 5 amp, and look at the design. So there's a significant recess that you have to get a tool in before you can actually contact a screw or a live part, and that's so that you can't accidentally come in contact with live components. Switch is the same, you can't get in there, and the screws are grub screws so that they fit well inside and they're recessed. In this case, these screws are dome-headed brass. So if you have the connection open, so if you've got this off the wall and you're maybe doing some decorating or some diagnostics, maybe you've got a lighting fault, you can easily touch these. I can put my finger right across the live and the neutral simultaneously, and that could result in a pretty bad shock, potentially a fatal shock. So these screws are no good. This screw on the left here, I've put in the neutral, if you can see that, but I can't touch that. It's very, very close. I probably could still, yeah, I can actually touch it if I push my finger in, but I can't, I can't touch it just by casually brushing my finger over. That's because I've basically nicked one of the screws out of this light and put it in here. Now, it's better, but it's not good. It's still not right, because if you look at the distance between the screw head and the screwdriver, it's very, very close. It's probably less than 1 millimeter. So I would imagine that it still doesn't meet the wiring regulations in the UK, but it's better than this configuration here. This here's just dangerous, and that I don't think that should be getting sold in the UK. If they change the grub screws and they just change the profile here, if this was raised a little bit, you know, so if the mould came up a bit more, then you would have a similar clearance to this or to this, and it would make the unit much safer, especially as these devices are aimed at, you know, home DIY type people, people who tinker with things. Installing devices like this does put people like that at risk, especially, you know, if they're not qualified, if they're not competent. And that's why in the UK we've got so many regulations, it's to keep people safe and to stop people having accidents that are potentially fatal. But the device itself, it works well, it looks nice, and with the app, you know, the app does have good functionality. Again, it's hackable. There's all sorts of videos online of people showing you how to hack them and load your own firmware onto them. So it is a nice device. I do like it. Again, the price point on this is pretty good. I think this one, I'm sure it was 14, or it might have been 15.99 for this one device, but it is a much more substantial device than the inline switch. You do get two of these for, you know, roughly the same price, but you know, you're not getting touch control, you're not getting the aesthetic that you get with this. I would just like to see them being, you know, for that safety being taken care of properly, and maybe a little bit more thought taken for the regulations, so that they could, you know, be sold in the UK and meet the regulations. So I'm going to leave a review for this. I reckon that I'll leave a 4-star review for the Inline, the Sonoff Basic, and probably a 3-star review for the touch wall switch, simply because they are nice products. They do, as far as I can see, they do work well. They're just lacking in terms of safety, and I don't think they deserve 5 stars for that reason. If you're watching this on YouTube, then please like and subscribe if you like this video. And if you're watching on Amazon reviews, then thanks for taking the time to watch the review.